Hi, I'm K.s.sanjeevan. I'm currently pursuing electrical electronic engineering at SNS College of Technology. And I'm here to discuss about my case study on how AMD overtook the market on sequence. First of all, we want to analyze the base and the evolution of the industries which booms in the chip industry. I'm right, I'm mentioning two companies, AMD and the most incompetent and dependent company, Intel. So let's see what the history and evolution.
Talking about computer chips manufacturing companies. Since Intel was founded in 1968, it has dominated the chip market. It was the world's largest chip maker by revenue for 25 years, and it's still America's largest chip company by sales. But then came AMD, Advanced Microcontroller Devices. In 2022, the long-time rival took Intel's top spot in market value, reaching a market gap of over 200 billion. It was the first time that ever happened. In part, this recent achievement can be traced back to one risky and expensive decision which was made by AMD that changed the game not just for the company but for the computing industry. So, how did AMD finally catch up to Intel? In July 1968, Silicon Valley, a small group of engineers founded Intel, a startup dedicated to chips, which are essentially the brain of a computer. Intel prioritized development from the start and didn't report any sales in the first 6 months. Meanwhile, 20 minutes down the road and 10 months later, a former co worker of those engineers founded AMD. Yes, the former worker of those companies or companies' engineers founded Advanced Micro Devices. Advanced Micro Devices was making chips that replicate the Intel's interface and architecture of the chips, which is just a replication of Intel in the starting days, but focusing more on keeping up than getting ahead. Then in 1970s, Intel came out with this, the first semiconductor memory chip. A year later, it was the best selling semiconductor device in the world. AMD's hardware didn't sell the same way. AMD really came up a kind of Intel copycat, as I said before. Company that was making alternatives to Intel chips, so maybe like a little bit cheaper. It can be an alternative, a cheap alternative for Intel and things like that. So they keep on came in second in a lot of ways to Intel, especially when it comes to CPUs and the rise of CPUs. CPUs are central processing units, basically chips that solves problems. Here's how they work. First, the base a flat piece of silicon. A silicon is a semiconductor, which means it's conductive, but can be made more conductive by adding other materials like phosphorus or boron. On the silicon piece, there is a pathway of transistor which turns current on and off. These strings of electrical blips read as one of the zeros and come together as a binary information. This information goes through this, a core in simplified terms. The core takes in the problem and shoot out an answer. Those answers help to determine how to respond to requests like opening a website or sending an emails. If the chip is the main brain, the core is like a tiny second brain. By 1971, Intel released the first programmable microcontroller or microprocessor. Another success. Well, the company churned out new chip after new chip. It is success over success for Intel. Creating industry standard after standard is not a big deal those days for Intel. But on the other hand, AMD is just struggling to create a enhanced product than Intel. They have been visioned through the future. Back in those times, it was able to put together this combination of marketing itself. Well, creating some of the world's best technology to become the powerhouse that came back then. By 1997, Intel chips served as the brains of 84% of the world's computer. It had 10 times AMD sales and 6 times its manufacturing capacities. Now, anyway, can have all the brain power they want. Just look at PC with an Intel processor inside. Going into a new millennium, AMD's market value lagged behind Intel's. Fast forward to late 2014 when the company tasked new CEO Lisa Su with turning things around. Before Su's tenure, the company had fought off rumors it would be sold and laid off workers. It is a but Su began working on a new innovation. AMD released a new design for their high performance chips that beat many of Intel's benchmarks. First, the transistors were organized in a new way on the chips called Zen architecture. At the same time, AMD rethought how chips themselves were made. Intel had been focusing on making a single CPU answer questions really fast. AMD decided that for some of its chips, it moved to chiplets. Instead of having one big silicon chip, there were multiple small chips in a small package and the same package, connected together and acting like one CPU. That strategy conferred some key advantages in terms of power consumption, in terms of cost, but still performed very well against Intel's products. The chip redesign was a pivotal factor that gave AMD an edge, and that really helped AMD return to more of a leadership position in the market when these products launched in 2017. Experts say that, comparably, AMD CPUs were less expensive and faster than Intel's. Whether AMD will continue to hold its own against Intel will depend on how well its innovation have laid the groundwork for the way forward. So, here it's my case study on how AMD pitched the market from the Intel for the past 15 years. Thank you.